Back to the Future's on, so I might want to shut that off.
Wow.
So this was a pandemic project that I think was supposed to be a man cave.
Oh, cool.
And somehow now it's an art study.
That's awesome.
My husband is pretty handy, given that he's a business guy. So
Wow.
yeah, these are like they're drop ceilings.
Wow.
Yeah. So we found them before everybody kind of took everything.
Yeah.
Because everybody was doing house projects. So by the time we wanted to do that room, there was no left. So at least we got enough to cover this room. But yeah.
This is beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. So the pieces aren't where I would like them to be to show, but I'm really focusing on like layers. So even though like the pink and the blue are not the tones that I would like, I want to be able to like scrape through them later to be able to pull them. And I just feel like being authentic and showing really where you're at is important in art because, you know, nothing's ever as perfect as you'd like it to be, especially like in the process of things.
Yeah.
So you can tell I'm torn between whether I want to do abstract or keep it like simplistic. I probably do a mix of both because it's a collection of 2 years worth of shots that I've taken, push notifications that I got mostly from like the New Center 5 app. And somewhere like in my intuition, I kind of felt like this is an important moment in time, right?
Yeah.
And as we got deeper into 2020, you know, the more, what's the right word I'm looking for? Dramatic, I guess, the messages got as the cases go up and things like that. And then it's nice to see all the way back to 2021 where we get, you know, lowest cases, you know, so far in records, 0 new deaths. But now we're kind of going back up, I feel like, as far as like the politics goes with the forced mandates, right? Which, I mean, this definitely isn't meant to be a political project.
Yeah.
I know it in some cases it will
Sure.
be.
Yeah.
But really, like, where I wanted to go with it is that this allowed, you know, technology, people can say it's good and it's bad, and it is both good and bad. But when I think back to, like, prior pandemics where by the time people got access to the information about the numbers and the statistics, you know, their village is already almost dead, right?
Yeah.
So regardless of whether or not you want to go to the grocery store, you know, or don't, being given the information that you need to make the best decision for your family, I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of want to show a positive side for technology. And some of the older art people that I have networked with are not too keen on the idea because it's like a screenshot thing, iPhone, you know. Older generations tend not to
Right.
be as excited about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I really do think like these are moments in time, and what's cool about it is that it has like the date, right? So
Yeah.
and the time that we were like given these like informations, right? So like there's also ones I haven't put them on here, but it shows what else I'm doing, whether that's like a chat and Instagram or like music I was listening to.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, like, so I got into human design over the pandemic, which that's like a chart from, which is a whole different story. But most of this is my art, which I kind of changed as I was going, which is cool because it's, you know, art of my art. But more importantly, that's really kind of where I'm going with that.
Yeah, because what's interesting about them, so the paintings, I guess, are these fairly large abstracts with the screenshots collaged onto them. But what's kind of an interesting thing I'm noticing is that the backgrounds of the screenshots collaged onto them are those also your paintings?
Correct.
So it's kind of an interesting depth
Yeah.
to it.
It's
Wow.
so funny too because when you say like how it shows the dates and it's the screenshots of the lock screen with the push notification from the news apps, it's so like the reason maybe it wouldn't resonate with an older audience because the digital aspect of it makes it so hyper contemporary, but it's
Right.
also so 2020 2021 that it's like that's going to be an interesting thing to look back on these in like 5 or 10 years to see how
Yeah.
contemporary and dated they are at the same time.
Exactly. And like how, you know, the numbers go down, then we have like, you know, the most amount of deaths in one day, the most amount of numbers in one day. And but then what's cool is that there's also big monumental things that were notified in between, like the sentence for the cop who was responsible for George Floyd's death.
Yeah.
I got a notification when he was sentenced. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? When Biden got elected into office, September 11th, 20th year anniversary for September 11th.
Yeah.
So there is like separate big things that went on, you know, during 2020, the riots in Boston, you know, when the president got COVID, like that, you know what I mean? Like, that's a big deal. So it's kind of intermittent with other big events that sometimes get overshadowed with the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell I'm struggling how I want it to come to fruition.
Like
simple.
visually?
Yeah, like do I want it simple? Do I want it abstract? Collage hasn't been really an area where I've developed enough skill set to be able to bang out, you know, canvases seamlessly, right? I'm still figuring out like what substances work best on a blank canvas or with acrylic underneath and things like that. But I also kind of see it as like an installation piece where I got this set of screens off of a woman on Facebook Marketplace, which you gotta love Facebook Marketplace.
Oh yeah, so those
And
are like
so-
window screens?
Yeah. So I kind of see it like if I can get, my cousin's really good with like welding. If I could get holes and kind of like put it on a pole, and you could like turn it like a storybook,
Oh, that would be cool.
right? Like sheet one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is very, very early form in terms of like thinking it through. But yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the best way. And you know what? It might be more than one, right? There might be a place for abstract. There might be a place for just things like this, right? Like where, you know, it's just sheets in a simple way without any distractions. But then it's fun to see, you know, some of these like colored over so that like you can barely read them, right?
Yeah.
The layers and depth of the pandemic as it kind of unfolds. So that's, you know, again, I'm not exactly where I'm at, where I'm ready to showcase it to the world, but I think it's actually more important to show, you know, the work in progress, you know, where you see it going, where you're currently at.
Yeah.
And I feel like the aesthetics and the colors you're using they really go nicely with your decorations that are already here. Like they just kind of look nice in the house. This is like a really like unified, you know, just your decorations and stuff, or like have like a really, what is the word? Like a unified aesthetic. So it's kind of like these look like they should all be hanging up with them.
Oh, that's good. That
You
makes
know.
me feel good. Yeah, thank you. Because I feel like I'm used to using like more neutral colors, but it's I swear, the more I learn about art, the more complicated it is to make, right? So it's like I know you're supposed to use like Mormon cools, and you know, as I'm studying more and more into composition and all those things, it's like it interferes with my natural soul, my artistic soul,
Sure.
where I just want to be expressive, because that's really how I came to art, was just kind of just, you know, splashing stuff all over, you know, and just using that like as an outlet. But now I'm in the space where, now that I'm learning more about art, trying to not allow it to interfere with my play, because that's, I think that's what God wants me to do, is to use that like as a form of expression.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I can't keep like some structure and some, you know, art basic principles in line. Because I'm definitely just not by nature a rule follower. Like ever. It's really hard for me to like stay and do what I'm told. So I guess that's the battle that I'm struggling with is.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like you're not a rule follower?
Because I never followed rules. I got in trouble. Never anything serious, but like, you know, I just kind of felt like when I was in high school, if I could get A's and B's and go a third of the year, then I was just like, oh, well, the more power to me, you know?
Yeah.
Which, like, maybe, okay, but still not setting you, like, up for great habits in the real world. I'm not the traditional worker in the sense that, like, my inspiration comes to me really late at night, which doesn't help where the real world, you know, gets up and functions at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So I can do that. It just like hurts my soul a little bit when I have to be like in very structured environments, as opposed to kind of just letting. I'm a hard worker, but I'd rather work when
the spirit calls.
When the spirit calls, yeah.
That makes sense.
It seems like you're most inspired between like 5 and 10 p.m. according to this piece. with the screenshots.
Well, those are when those were sent to me, but yes.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about, you said that when you first got into art, it was more of an outlet for you? Like, why was that? Like, how did that look for you?
So I didn't even identify as an artist until 2014.
Yeah.
I had like a notebook that I would like scribble quotes in and kind of draw over them, and didn't even really see it as art. Nobody in my life knew that I did it. And then I was at a nail appointment, and the woman told me that she used to be a pharmacist, and she quit her $80,000 job to be a nail tech. And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, that's so amazing. You know, like that spoke right to my soul. And she was like, oh, I had said something about like being interested in art, and she's like, oh, do you have any pieces? And I had this moment where everything in my body wanted to say no, you know, because I'd never shown any of my art.
Yeah.
Nor would I ever have felt comfortable. And so I had this moment where I was like, okay. You know what I mean? So I like pulled up like a picture on my phone, and like literally my heart was like pounding, and I just kind of like slid it, and in my head I'm like, I'm never gonna see this girl again, so it's fine, like, whatever she likes, you know. And I just kind of like went like this, and she was like, she's like, you should sign up for this organization called Raw Artist. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, like thought about it. And I went home and I like read about the organization. It's a really cool organization. So what it is, it's a organization that helps artists, natural born artists that don't really have sophistication to their work, but have like a natural talent. Mm-hmm. And they allow them to have a showcase, and they do paid professional photos. They do of your work and of you, and they do a professional video of you. It's a really, really good organization. So I had to submit this whole profile, like as if the website was going to go live.
Yeah.
So upload all my photos, do my bio, all this stuff. It took like a really, really long time, and I submitted it. And I forgot about it. And then like probably like a couple months later, I got an email saying like, you've been selected to be in Raw Artist Communique Showcase or whatever. And I'm like, what? Like what? This woman, like, and she's like, you know, with a microphone, like, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. Like, you have a month to get ready to fill a whole wall full of art. And I was terrified. Now, mind you, I have no art supplies, no canvases, no idea about art supplies. Like, I've been using markers, and I don't identify as an artist. So I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I just did it. Yeah. And and I actually have some of my first pieces back here, and it was an incredible experience. The organization was like just exactly like did exactly what it was intended to do. These are probably my first pieces. Back like this, I like painted over Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, those are cool.
Yeah. And this is like a Rubik's Cube that I used.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow!
Yeah, so like this is pen. Like this is literally where I was at, and I was also broke. So I had very little. These are from like Michael's. You know, these are and that's how I sign the back of my paintings too, is with my footprint.
Oh, that's cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. So it's like a footprint stamp and paint on the back of the piece.
Exactly, because the night before the show, I was stressed out because I'm like, how am I going to sign these paintings? I'm like, Amanda Smith is so generic, and Lamoureux Smith is so long, and nobody can pronounce it. And I stepped back in the palette, and I was like, oh my God. So I stepped back again, and I thought I stepped on the wooden floors, and I realized that I stepped in the middle of my canvas, and which I freaked out with, but then I kind of looked down, and I was like, oh my God, that's exactly how I'm going to sign my paintings. And that's been everybody's favorite part, to be honest, is the footprint.
It's really cool.
Do you do that now still?
I do.
That's so cool.
So I call it my signature footprint because I was like freaking out about how I was going to sign it, you know, so that's kind of like, oh, my signature footprint.
Yeah.
But,
I was going to say, I noticed you, so you said earlier that you wanted to learn more, or you were learning more. Oh, sure. Oh, perfect. You were learning more about like color theory and composition and all that. And that in the beginning I guess I think it's interesting that the paintings that you're doing now have these like really beautiful kind of muted, more neutral toned colors. And your paintings that you just showed us from your first show were like super colorful and loud, and you I guess, mentioned that you like to follow your heart and where God brings you with your aesthetics. Do you feel like, I guess, your education or what you're learning about now kind of like takes away from that?
Yes, so I'm a self-taught artist, so
Okay.
I kind of went backwards. I kind of realized I loved to do it, and then was making things started to happen, like lining up, and opportunities came more so than without any type of resistance. And so then I was like, oh my God, I need to start learning about what I'm doing, right? Because I don't have any idea. So I'm trying to learn as I go. Like I have folders of like techniques and like different artists and things like that. But I feel like that was a blessing because I was able to figure out that I was an abstract expressionist artist, and I didn't even know that that was a thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like I was very untamed and unaffected. Like I was allowed to have my inner organic artist allow itself to show before labels came in. So I really feel like that was a huge blessing. And when I started to read about abstract expressionism, I was like, my mind was like blown because I was like, there's like a type of art. And when I would read like where the artist came from, because I definitely am into like reflecting subconscious, like I really like from an early age wanted to like bang out all my inner demons. Like I wanted to like work through all my shit. And my mom was like very focused on like the material worlds and like, you know, doing this. And I was like, I want to work through all my shit. Excuse my language. I want to work through all of it. You know what I mean? I'd get it all out of the way.
Yeah.
And then be my best self, because I felt like if I didn't work on myself now, how could I really be with anybody else and be my whole self without having to do the inner work that I know I needed to do, instead of just ignoring it and like everybody thinks, oh no, I'm fine, you know, you just keep shoving it down, but that stuff comes back, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, so to your question, I do feel like it has gotten in my way a little bit, because now that I'm learning about art and I see other artists out there, I have kind of tamed it down a little bit, because I realize that the aesthetic of paintings that people are buying tend to be the more neutral. But I try to do a good mix of like that and what I would normally do, just so my artistic soul is getting fulfilled.
Yeah.
But also I'm still selling paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean? But I think it did kind of get in the way of like what my natural soul artist would have liked to just be completely free without restrictions or you know.
I think that's kind of interesting because there's a lot of people who start out like the opposite, where they are very, very within the lines and they are very, very like hyper conscious of rules or precedent or convention. And sometimes people, you probably know this from your own life, but people sometimes have to work in reverse, where they're trying to find that freedom and get away from the lines, and they feel like trapped by that. So that's interesting that you started in a place where you wanted to just, you know, just throw it up, like just put it all out there.
Yeah, I felt that like, it was therapeutic. That's kind of where I went to like, and I would start on the back of a canvas with like a quote. And so I had this notebook of like quotes that I would write in, and then I would like, you know, overline the O, and then somehow you wouldn't even be able to read the quote. And that's what I brought with me to my first art show, and that's kind of what did it for me as far as the next opportunity. So there was a woman, her name is Britt Johnson, and she does a show called Boss Lady News on BNN network, Boston Neighborhood Network in Boston, the local TV show. And she was walking around, and I brought that notebook with me because I felt like if I'm going to be an artist, right, this is what I felt. If I'm going to be an artist, this I'm going to throw my whole self out there, because that's all I've got and it's me. So I put my notebook on like a stool next to like my display or whatever, and I happened to be talking to somebody, and I saw in my peripheral that a woman had like opened it or whatever. And as I'm talking, I'm realizing she's still looking at it, and I'm like, oh, because before I put it out, I like looked at the first couple pages. I'm like, I don't even know what's really in there. Like, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I figured out like, well, she's clearly interested in it. So I'm like, you know, swallowed my fear and just like walked up and introduced myself. And she's like, this is really amazing, like the thoughts that you have in here, you know? And so I said, yeah, this is like these are my inner thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, and this is who I am. This is where because it really was where my art comes from. And so she's like, oh, I would love for you to come on my show. So I was like, okay. Again, I'm like, didn't self-identify as an artist right then. And it was live TV, local, but live TV. So I'm like, yes, I'm doing that. So went on that show, and she was great. And then she connected me. Apparently there was It's All About Art show in that studio as well. So she set me up with them, which I was able to talk to. And that was so fun. And then I saw on Facebook a couple months later that the co-host was moving away and that they were looking for a new co-host. And I just was like, hey. I was like, I'd be interested in doing that. And they had me come in, and then they had me come in as co-host. And so, like, all these things were just kind of, like, unfolding. And I had to just go from, like, scared out of my mind to just leaning. And I just kind of went in with it. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you can judge me because I am not, I didn't go to art school. So I kind of used that as, like, a shield of honor of, like, I don't care if you judge me because I don't know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
But that was me protecting my ego,
But that's so brave at the same time. So I feel like even if you do go to art school and you feel like nobody feels prepared coming out of that, it's just more labeling and more ways to kind of figure out how you identify, I guess.
Right.
So that is really cool that you kind of just jumped in the deep end and it kind of met you there.
Yeah, it was scary. And abstract art isn't everybody's thing anyway. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, like, self-taught abstract art, I felt like people were like, who does this girl think she is? But then I was also like, these things just keep, like, unfolding.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then just, like, seeing things online and, like, being able to have been published in 2020 and be, like, a semi-finalist in another competition. So I'm just really grateful, but I'm, like, reflecting. I just kind of want to get to I just know how healing, like, art is for me. And centering, and, like, I just want to get through to the people, adults or kids, who have an interest in art but feel like, oh, I didn't go to art school, I don't really know anything about art, like, how could I say, like, how could I even do that, like screw all of that, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much more to gain from being artistic, whatever medium calls to you. Like, who cares what other people think? There's such a stigma, I feel like, in the art world, and it's so snooty, and, oh, where did you go, or who do you know, or, who's your favorite artist, or what gallery, like, it's like, that's not, in my opinion, what art is about, I think it's really, like, it should be coming from your soul, however your soul wants to speak, and it is so freeing. It's how I had a personal relationship with God. I just found so much healing through art, and I just want to get to that girl, or that guy, or that old man, or that child, that's sitting there, like, not leaning into art, just knowing how much, like, healing that can bring. So I just want to get through, and that's how I see, like, the more success I get, the more I feel like I have a platform to be like, you don't need to go to art school, you don't need to get approval, you just need to put whatever utensil you want. Again, like, I was using crayon and marker because I didn't have art supplies. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll get there because art supplies is really expensive.
Yeah.
So it's like, use whatever you want, like, I was using a Rubik's Cube, right, to, like,
to stamp paint.
That's such a cool idea.
Well, it's what I had. It wasn't even mine.
So,
yep. Sorry, Lauren.
So I'm noticing a huge theme in, like, every story that you've told us is that they all seem to have a point in the story where you just said, fuck it. I'll just do it, or I'll just go out on a limb, or I'll just
won't let fear win.
Yeah, so where does that come from you? Like, how did you get, like, some people struggle their whole lives trying to, like, find that in themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but I just refuse to let fear be the reason why I do or don't do something. I refuse to do that, because the second you allow fear to make a small decision for you, it takes over, I do think that both my parents, from when I was a very little girl, instilled, like, confidence, in the sense where, like, when Lauren, who I just spoke to, she laughs because I called her out of the blue one time. We were cheerleaders together, Pop Warner cheerleaders, but we didn't go to the same school. And I called her one day and I asked her to hang out, and she's like, we ended up being really, really good friends, but she's like, yeah, I thought that was so strange when you called me. She's like, because she thought to herself, she's like, we're not even friends. Like, why would she call me? But, like, my mom was like, I was bored one day, and she's like, why don't you call a friend to hang out? And I was like, she's like, how about Lauren? Why don't you call Lauren? And I was like, okay. You know what I mean? So I called her, and it's funny because Lauren's like, yeah. I was like, I thought that was so weird. But she said yes, and then we ended up hanging out. So I think they really encourage, like, even, like, when I was probably preteen, like, my mom was like, you want a sub from D'Angelo's? You call D'Angelo's and you order your sub. And I'd be like,
wow,
I don't want to do that. She's like, well, do you want the sub? And I was like, well, yeah. And she's like, then call and order the sub. And I'm like, fine. You know what I mean? So it just, like, got me more comfortable doing things that were just not it's not comfortable to do, especially as a kid, you know, but I think my parents definitely taught my sister and I to do things that we were uncomfortable with, I guess.
That's cool. And that's really cool in terms of how it carries over into your art, because I feel like abstract expressionism is, for those who might not know, like using abstraction to express feelings by working the canvas while you're working through those concepts, which requires a lot of vulnerability. And I feel like it can be really intimidating to do that, to put yourself out there that way. So just kind of letting it all go, it makes sense why those things connected. But that's really cool to hear. I also wanted to ask about, when you were saying that you were the co-host of a television show about art, what was that like for you? That
was really fun.
You're still doing that?
No, I only did it for a year, and I literally, I say to my husband all the time, I'm like, I just want to be a TV co-host. I loved that so much. So it was a weekly live TV show with Glenn Williams. It was the longest running local arts TV show there was, and we would have two artists come in a week, and we would interview them about their background, about like their styles, about their aspirations, and it was really, really fun. I think I'm a talker by nature, so that was really a natural setting for me. I was able to do like a 30-minute segment where I did Motivational Mondays, which we got in trouble once they got onto the radio because they didn't play it on Mondays, so they told me I had to change the name of my segment. If it played on Monday, on Wednesday it didn't make sense. Yeah. So I just did like quotes, because that's really where my original like art. I would write down quotes that, if I felt like a little twinge, like good or bad, like I just felt like there was work there to do. So I would write down like the quote to like reflect on it later. And so that's how I started my art. I would write it on the back of the canvas and then just kind of like get in that headspace and just kind of work out whatever that was on top of it. So that was cool to have like the creative. It was so intimidating because when you're because I would be on the couch, right? He would be at the table and the guest would be here, and he would lead it and then I would kind of respond or whatever. There were a couple shows that I had to be the host myself because he was on the board of WGBH, and so their board meetings were on Tuesday, so there were 3 shows that I had to do by myself. But I had a really good structure with which to copy what he did, so I kind of just did the same format. But the segment that I had to do, Motivational Mondays, is terrifying because it's just you staring. There's a green screen behind you, and it's just your material, and just like, okay, you, Amanda, and you just bam. There was no response. It was terrifying. Terrifying. But I got through it. Some were better than others, but I just think it was like really good experience. I really actually miss hosting. I really, really liked that.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So in terms of the quotes being the kind of seed of a lot of the paintings that you make, how do you find them? And are they ever your quotes, or are they books, or
they're not. No, normally they're not my quotes. Sometimes they're my quotes. I have one up here. Have you guys ever heard of the book? I forget what it's called. Like Artist Journey, where it's like you're supposed to like first 8 weeks like write 3 pages a day.
I'm not familiar with it, but I think I've seen the title maybe.
Yeah, it's from an author that has a bunch of stuff, but I like a lot of her quotes. Like on here, let's say, remember it is my job to do the work, not judge the work. So just things like that, where like leap and the net will appear. Artist Way by Julia Cameron. That's where that came from. Yeah. Remember ideas become things. There was a notebook cover that I got by Ted Carpenter. So, just kind of keeping track of like things that like resonate with me or like encourage me to continue to like to keep going. Usually I used to write down a lot of quotes from what was it? The Oprah thing on Sundays. What was it? Sunday something, I forget. It's like Oprah's like newest thing on her channel. It's like Super Soul Sunday. Oh, filled lots of good stuff. I tried to get my cousin to watch it, and he's like, Amanda, guys don't like Oprah. And I'm like, that's so like stereotypical for you to say that.
What was that show like?
Super Soul Sunday. So she just brings on like really inspirational people and just like talks to them about like what was life like for you. Like it's like Oprah would bring on Oprah, like that type of person.
Oh, okay.
Musicians, politicians, like people who just have a lot to say and a lot of good insight. Usually they'll have like a book or something out that she'll like read first and go through, but like her little tidbits, I swear. I mean, Oprah's Oprah for a reason.
Legend.
Yeah. So that was I used to watch that when I lived in Boston. That was like full of like good stuff that I was like, oh, I gotta write all this down.
That's really cool. I'm noticing a theme of kind of a call and response between outside sources of inspiration and then sort of staying with and working through things that you feel a response to, even if you don't know what that response is yet.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool, because I think a lot of people will make work with their whole thesis planned in advance, like knowing what they want to say and how they're going to say it and presenting it in different ways, which can be cool, I guess, but it's interesting to hear you kind of, like, being vulnerable in the process is a big part of your process, it seems.
Yeah, I'm definitely not, like, I don't believe personally in planning things out, because I feel like that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And God bless the people that do. You know, probably they have less mistakes or less things that they wish they didn't say. But I think it's important for me, like, authenticity and just, like, really, like, speaking from the heart and being vulnerable. Like, I feel like that's all I really have to give, like, in a given moment. And that's where, like, my best relationships have been built off of, is, like, that trust and, like, that, like, this is me, this is you, like, let's just, like, accept each other for who we are and just, like, try to be the best people that we can to each other and go from there. And so I feel like sometimes you'll be able to draw people out with that, like, sense of, and sometimes people use it against you, and sometimes, you know what I mean? But then it's like, you know, that hurts, but you just kind of have to put that aside and be like, that's their journey, that's their decision, you know, and then you know that those aren't your type of people, you know?
Yeah.
So because it's like one of those things when you're a self-taught artist, it's like, do I include that? Do I not? Do I not? And it's like, that's all ego, you know?
Yeah.
And so.
Like constantly thinking about how you're being perceived or whether or not someone's judging you.
Right.
Or like picking you apart or something.
And to be honest, sometimes that really does get in my way because I overtalk or I'm loud or I'm like, you know, overdo it. But I would take that type of person over someone who was methodical and strategic, and because that's just not who I am. So I'd accept someone foibles, like in that sense. That doesn't bother me as much. But yeah, I can be over the top for sure. But, you know, I'm not for everybody, and that's fine.
Yeah. And fuck
yeah,
it.
I mean, I agree. I think being, like, over the top and exciting and being, like, you know, just actually who you are. And because what's really beautiful about that is, like, people, you know, it's unapologetically expressing yourself, you know, and just, like, giving, like, you know, it's like you said, you're kind of giving somebody the chance to accept you, and you accept them, and you connect with them, and, like, you know, if somebody...
And rejection is a huge part of it too,
Right.
but it's like that now we know, right? If like that's a good thing to know too. Where was I gonna go with that? I forgot. Yeah, I think it's important to be yourself, and I think it's hard to do, but the more you do it, I think your network, the people around you change, you know, and then I just feel like I'm happier being who I am, and
Was there ever a time where you felt like the opposite, where you felt like you had to be somebody else?
I never felt like I had to be someone else. I do feel like I had to limit parts of myself that weren't really being encouraged. I think because my mom was very much like, you know, go to school, you get your degree, that's how you make money. And so, like, when I first got into astrology, she, like, for some reason thought I was gonna, like, go, like, move to some random country and, like, you know, use my steps because, like, the stars told me to go left, and, like, I always had a good head on my shoulders, even, like, when I was, like, figuring out my way, which I don't think she ever had the ability to see, which I get it, you know, moms worry, and, you know, in my younger 20s, I was kind of, like, all over the place in the sense of, like, not, she was worried about me, is what I'm saying, and so when I would talk to her about art and stuff like that, it wasn't really encouraged in my household, which it wasn't like she didn't want me to be happy. She just didn't realize how much of a part of who I was an artist. And so I kind of felt like I had to hold back a little bit of that. And I mean, I guess to your point, yeah, because I remember I did have that notebook, and somebody who was the closest to me ever one day actually kind of opened it, and I remember being across the room and, like, diving across the room to, like, shut it, because I was just like, oh my God, like, shut that notebook, you know, like, oh, like the fear of like being shown like that. And that was the same notebook that I kind of put on display. So I think that moment, that woman, where she, you know, but she did share with me, she's like, yeah, I was making like 80 grand as a pharmacist, and she's like, and I quit my job, everybody thought I was crazy, and I wanted to be a nail tech, and I was like, this lady's fantastic, you know what I mean? Like, this is everything I ever aspired to be, you know. And so but that moment where like she's like, oh, do you have any, I think had I allowed fear in that moment, I wouldn't be here, you know.
Yeah.
And so like I just felt like that worked, and so I just kind of, for better for worse, just like if it scares me, it intrigues me more. It's like, okay, well then let's figure out why this scares me. You know what I mean? Let's lean in a little further to this.
Right, because little moments like that are like little crossroads, you know, and I guess maybe you can pick the wrong way sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
You know, which is probably, you know, where fear at times will get you, I guess. So.
Do you feel like marketing your work and the sort of sales aspect of being an artist makes it difficult to be that vulnerable sometimes?
Well, that's a good question. I think because I have a background in software sales, where like for 10 years I had to make cold calls. And
that will toughen you up.
Oh wow, that's good context.
Oh yeah, I got rejected like 98 out of 100 calls every day for 10 years. So
that's a big piece of information, actually.
Yeah. That was my mom. You know, that I did software. So I started as a business development rep. You know, in technology space, leading. You know, then went into software sales, and then got a really high position at a business process outsourcing company as their AVP for national business development. I don't feel like that's where really God's taking me. I feel like he's pulling me back towards art. So I still feel a little bit conflicted in terms of like, okay, you worked your whole career to get here. You're making really good money now. You have the position. And it's funny because like once I had that position, I noticed that people started to like react to me a little bit differently, or like listen a little bit more intensely, which felt good for my ego, but also annoyed the heck out of me, because it's like I was the same person I was 30 seconds ago before you found out my title. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
like, but
right.
it, you know, it's one of those things where it's just like so many people are like that, where like if your title is impressive, they're like, oh, tell me more, you know. But before you tell that, they're like, yeah, like that's just the way that it goes.
Yeah,
that really like irritates me, you know. But in the moment when all of a sudden they're like, you know, dazzling looking at you, it does feel good, but I also know that's like stroking my ego, so I put that aside and like remember that that's why you were all of a sudden interested in talking to me, you know.
It's a good way to think about it.
But to your question, marketing myself, I think because I had my mom, who always encouraged me to make the call anyway, and then having so many years of having the phone, you know, hung up in my face, I think played well into me being able to market or like reach out, because I'm used to, you know, it doesn't affect me as much anymore because I've had so many rejections when I was making calls for other companies. So I think that actually did help. And I want to go back to my mom one day and say thank you, because I felt like I had to choose my soul or like what the real world says you need to do to make money. And so when I went to school, I felt like I was like college to get my degree, I felt like I was like giving up on my artist soul. But now I see how much that helped me with my skill sets on like how to put a paper together, how to like write or read or anything, you know. So now I'm kind of like, oh, you can have both. It doesn't need to be one or the other, and everything's kind of better when you have both sides of the coin work in your favor, you know. So had she not pushed me, who knows, I would have been like in Costa Rica, you know, tight roping, you know,
following stars.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
This would have been a whole different podcast.
Right, yeah, seriously. Yeah.
I also feel like I need to just ask about the astrology thing. Is
Sure.
that also something that you do for work?
On the side, yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
You work with astrology?
Well, I have an astrological software. So you need your time of birth and your date of birth and your city of birth. Yeah.
How does that work? Is it so a person will put in their information into your software?
They give it to me, and then I put it into my software, and then it'll tell you, because people think that astrology is just like your sun sign, which I don't even like read horoscopes, because that's just one very small point. Like your sun sign is just like your basic values, but most people have a combination of signs. So like your main three are your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign, which they call ascendant. So your sun is just like your basic outlook. Your moon, whatever sign that's in, your traits will be like your emotions, like how your emotional nature fulfills itself. And then your rising sign is kind of like how you come off to others in a room where you're not comfortable, or like how you act to strangers. Your Mercury will be like how you, your style of communication. Are you talkative? Are you shy? Are you self-conscious? Are you confident? Mars is like your assertion level. So like if you have Mars in a fire sign, then you're going to be much more like into confrontation. You're not going to feel uncomfortable like being approached or like having a disagreement. If you have a water sign, you're going to be like confrontation, like, oh, you know, like I don't like that's like I'll run from that. So each of the planets kind of represent an area of life, and then each of the signs have like different qualities. So like my sun is in Virgo, which I do have, like I'm like organized, I'm analytical, I'm critical, all those wonderful things. But my moon is in Aries, which is assertive and aggressive and in your face, lovely qualities. And then, but then my rising sign is Cancer, so I come off like really kind and soft and like can't step on ants, you know. So those are like very contradictory things. So like if you meet someone and you feel like you get to know them, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, once you get to know them better, they'll like emotionally react in a way that you're like, that does not seem like you. Like, where's that coming from? A lot of times people will have very contradictory signs. Sometimes people have, like, for the most part, the same, if not the same sign, the same element. So they'll be like mostly water or mostly air, and so like their sign really does, like, I'm sure if you read, what's your sun sign?
Leo.
Leo?
Yeah.
Sagittarius.
Okay, cool. So fire. My Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all in Leo. So when you read your, like, do you feel like an affinity to it? Like, do you feel like, or you're kind of like some things are right and some things are not right?
So I personally haven't been done like an extended like search into this. Theo, on the other hand, is very into astrology and stuff.
Like I've done an extensive
So
search of your
you'd
chart.
probably you'd be a better person to ask.
What's your moon and your rising?
Leo, Moon, Pisces, rising.
So you came off as Pisces.
Did I really?
Yeah, 1000%. Yeah, just like very feminine and like well put together and like sweet.
Oh, thank you.
That's
good feedback.
Yeah, like when I first saw you, I was like felt Pisces all the way, but that makes sense because like your rising sign is like how you come off. You know? So
cool.
That's funny because you gave me the wrong birth time when we first met.
When that happens.
Yeah.
It was your mom gave me the wrong.
My mom gave me 2 different birth
and
times.
people don't get it, and you're like, no, literally, like a 10-minute difference can mean a lot.
Yeah.
You know? And then you do all the work and you do the chart, and then it's like wrong, and you're like,
yeah, it's a complete change.
that was a lot of work. Yeah.
So with the software, when you're putting in this information, so is it a website for one?
It can be.
And so when someone does it, is the information received at the end? Is this things you've written, or is it based off of some kind of literature?
So that's where I would actually have a hard time, because I'm someone who wants it to be like what I'm writing, but the time that it takes to like reword it into my own words is not what people are willing to pay. So what happens is, so I have time passages, which is like it's like a pretty, have you heard of time passages?
No, I don't think so.
It can be, it's a computer system, and it's also an app, and so they have like auto written, like based off of like you put your information in, and then there'll be aspects, right? Like, so your sun will be square to Neptune or something like that. So those are all generated information that's already written. I have the series where like I pay for to be able to reproduce it, but I still just don't like that I'm not writing it, because I just feel like a third party useless kind of like, you know what I mean? But the time it takes to like read it, look at everything, and then rewrite it in my own words doesn't make sense for like what people are willing to charge it for.
Yeah, that would be a crazy amount of work.
Exactly. So sometimes I just kind of like look at it and verbally kind of give my 2 thoughts on it. But yeah, they're usually auto-generated. You can go to any like website and anything that says like generate your natal chart. You can put your information in, and usually like if not right away, like 48 hours later, you'll get like a chart or whatever. Did you end up doing his chart after the fact?
I did, and I forget what your moon was, but I know, you look so afraid right now.
No, I definitely, I don't know. We've done it. You've done it many times.
Yeah.
So you're double Leo Pisces?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're a Sagittarius sun. I forget what your moon was, but I know I thought for a year.
Was it like moon? Was it rising Virgo?
Yes, but I thought it was rising Leo for a year, and I was like, that's weird.
Oh, but my birth time was wrong.
But you were
That's
actually
what
rising Virgo, and I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That tracks.
Yeah.
I think you might have been an Aries moon, but I forget. Aries or Scorpio. It was another fire sign, I think.
Love Aries signs.
Yeah, not 100% sure. I think it's really cool stuff though. I'm just not as studied on it.
We'll do it later.
So,
Yeah, you
sure.
can send me your
Oh, no
info.
way.
Yeah.
That'd be so fun. I
will,
totally
yeah.
would.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I'm obviously interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I
Right.
also found human design, which is a whole other thing, which we can talk about.
Human design?
Yeah, what
Yeah.
is that?
So it's a mix between astrology and I Ching.
I Ching?
Yeah, so like the I don't even know how to really articulate it. You know the you never heard of I Ching?
I have not.
Where it's like the little lines.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so maybe I should have prepared.
Is it like a
beforehand.
spiritual or practice, or
Yes. So it's just kind of like a mix of a few different systems that is really based off of like your chakras. And apparently like we're transitioning now, we're 9-centered beings instead of 8. And so like it just talks about whether or not your chakra is defined or whether or not it's open. And if it's open or undefined, you're more conditioned by other people's energy that have it defined. So I'm a projector, which like blew my mind when I figured out like what that was. My whole life kind of made sense. So yeah, we can talk about that too. I can do your charts because I'm interested in that stuff too.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so fun.
Yeah,
I would love that.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So how did you get into astrology and stuff at a younger age?
I did. I had someone in my life who I really didn't understand, and we like were like oil and vinegar. And when I had read that person's sign, like I got complete goosebumps because it was so accurate. And so when I read my sign, Virgo, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of like that, but I'm definitely not like that, because Virgos are supposed to be like really shy and like timid, and I'm like, that's just not me. And so I was like, how the heck does one person's sign so accurate and then mine's like so? I was like, that makes no sense. So I started researching like and realizing that there was like, you know, not just your sun sign, your moon sign, your Mercury, your Venus, your Mars, every planet when you were born was in a certain position, and how those all play into each other and the aspects that they make contributes to the nature. So this person actually had their sun, their moon, their Venus, their Mercury, and their Mars were all Libra.
Oh, wow.
So no wonder why when I read Libra, I was like, oh my God, this is so this person. But most people have like a cluster of all different signs. So that was unusual, but that got me into looking into it more. And then I just started researching and then finding that you could pull people's charts, and that kind of sent me, you know, off and, you know, trying to tell the people in my life at that point. They're like, cool, Amanda, huh?
Yeah.
But that, you know, different tribe.
Do you feel like it was more popular or less popular when you were younger? Because right now it's like everybody
so trendy.
Yeah.
is so into
Which is
it.
fun. I like that.
Yeah, was it
People care.
not so much when you first
Yeah,
got
I mean,
into it?
there was no Instagram, you know.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Facebook was, for me, back, you had to have a college email address.
Oh, really?
So, like, in 2005,
That was
that's when
like-
Facebook came
Wow.
out, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was around, but it wasn't, like, it was definitely not as trendy. And there weren't, like, platforms that kind of, like, or apps that, yeah, it's, if I were to have been born and I was a teenager now, like, yeah, now people are much more, like, open to hearing about it, but my generation, not so much. You were like, they were like, oh, you're into astrology, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you're trustworthy. But, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I feel like things like that, even things like art, really, I feel like reach a younger audience now because of TikTok and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy for things to explode from like a niche interest to a trend because you find your people, I guess.
Right. So one thing I was thinking too, like, is like, I noticed you're talking about like faith and God and your direction and stuff. Like, do you feel like, I feel like I've known some, like, I don't know if you identify as Christian, but I feel like I've known some folks who feel like astrology has like conflicted with their faith or their beliefs.
Well, not for me. I do find that there's a lot of division between that. So like even like my screen name is like Art and Astrology Boston, and I thought about like as I got more into my faith and into like I'm part of an organization called SIVA, Christians in Visual Arts, but I'm like, no, that's really where my interests are, you know. And if you look back, like in the Bible, like they really did like look at the stars and, you know, to decide things. And I just kind of feel like it should. I'm just much more of an inclusive person, even if I don't agree perhaps with what it is that you're talking about. Like I think this day and age is all us against them, me against you. you're either in, you're out, you know, you're hated or loved. Like, I just hate all of that. I hate the exclusion of people based off of silly things. So I keep it because I do have such an interest in it, and who would I be to, like, all of a sudden pretend like, oh, the judgment, you know, like, I'm sure some people feel like that's, you know, not what the Bible says, but I'm just not someone who, again, follows rules like that. I think that, you know, my heart and my relationship is with God, you know, and so he knows my heart, he knows, like, my intentions, and so if I happen to have interest, like, my husband's grandmother was the only person, she actually just passed, and she had a huge part in raising him, and she was the only person I knew that had equal interest and relationship with God and astrology, and I thought that was so mind-boggling, especially for her generation. Like, that was not accepted in the Catholic Church to be into. Like, it was looked at as, like, witchcraft, you know.
Right.
So I just thought that was so fascinating that she knew so much about God and the Bible and so much about astrology. We ended up finding out that we used the same software.
Oh, that's so funny.
So it was like, and it was perfect when I met my husband too, because my friend, I met him through a friend, and she was like, oh, don't tell him any of your birthday. She'll look up your astrology chart. And he's like, too late.
What is his sign?
He's a Libra.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yep. Libra, Sag.
Oh, nice.
With Venus and Virgo. But it was good because he was introduced to all of this, like, crazy stuff, as people say, right? So, like, I felt like I could be my full self because he was around a grandmother who, like, was all into that stuff. So there was no explaining or needing to, like, hide that.
Yeah.
So it's been really good to be able to, like, talk to him about these things and, like, have him be open to it. In our wedding vows, he said, I promise to get people's birth dates so you can look up their astrology charts.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's so nice.
Yeah, and I promise to get you chips when you're hungry, you know, just, like, real life stuff, you know?
That's cute.
Right. That's important.
Oh.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about did you say it was an organization you're a part of? It was Christians in Art?
Christians in Visual Arts, SIVA.
Oh, cool.
Yep, I actually just went to the conference in Austin, Texas a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've been part of that group for a couple years now, and I was part of their Heart to Heart program, which is a monthly artist circle where we come together. It started over the pandemic, so over Zoom, once a month, artists come together and talk about the state of their heart and the state of their art. And I got so much out of that, and so I'm helping to facilitate, like, a new chapter. I actually just had one last night. It's just like a place of, like, again, where you can talk about art and God, because a lot of, like, Christian circles and churches, like, would view art as, like, being selfish, which I find mind-boggling. So not a lot of people have, like, a community where they can talk equally about art and God. And so, like, it's just such a cool space to have, like, you know, to talk about, like, what you're doing with your art, and just, like, the hard stuff that comes with an artist, you know what I mean? Like the difficult stuff, the behind the scenes stuff that, like, nobody talks about, or, like, when you have a show and, like, only one piece sells, or, like, you know, just stuff that just, like,
or none.
Yes, exactly. Just stinks, you know, that just, like, you just want to have people relate to, you know? And then, like, we pray together and things like that. So that's been, like, a huge part of the organization that I've been really involved with. And I'm hoping to, like, continue to get involved there.
That's really lovely. That's really cool to have those two communities intersect. That's awesome.
So I think it's kind of interesting to mention that there's some Christian perspective on, like, not really favoring art or thinking it's selfish, when so much of our art history and Western art is based completely around, like, Christ.
Yeah.
You know? So.
That's a
You'd
good
think,
point.
right? You would think that would, like, go hand in hand, but somehow, yeah.
Huh.
What a strange thing.
I hadn't thought about that question before. That is really interesting.
Well, I guess I didn't really, like, I you know, it's one thing you kind of notice, I feel like, just socially, is that maybe there isn't, like, I guess I don't know, I'm trying to figure out, like, an intelligent way to say it, but I guess you don't really meet, like, tons of people, I guess, in, like, visual art, kind of, like, you know, urban, like, cool art circles that are like, hi, I'm a Christian.
Right.
Art. Like, it's not, like, not like
hand in hand thing that usually comes together. Yeah.
I guess so. I don't really know. I mean, I guess I met a lot of people who feel like their faith just doesn't really have anything to do with what they're making.
Yeah.
So maybe that might be why they wouldn't bring it up as much.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Just like a random observation. So.
But it's interesting too, because when you talk about expressionism or work that, even if it's not expressionism, something that is vulnerable or introspective, I feel like that goes in hand with any kind of like spiritual practice or faith practice. Like you're reflecting and processing things, which could be something like political, or it could be something about your faith. Like you would think those things would mesh.
Yeah, it's like if you're not painting a picture of Jesus's face, then people don't connect the two per se, you know.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, and like I think like I don't know, I've thought about this a lot, especially with like music, but like, you know, performance or writing songs or even just making art that is being consumed by other people, it is like a transcendent thing where you're like kind of...
That's the name of the conference I just went, was Transcendence.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, but sorry, keep going.
Oh, no, I guess it's just like really like even for people that might have like a kind of agnostic view of what they're making or what they're consuming, a lot of people might say that, you know, somebody having a spiritual experience is having the same experience as somebody having an artistic one. In some ways.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I guess not.
But like that, what piece is it? The piece behind you, that was submitted for like Engage Art Contest for 2019-2020, and that was prompted from Ephesians 6-10 about spiritual warfare and how we need to put on the whole armor of God, which ended up being a semi-finalist, which I was like super thrilled about.
Wow.
So I kind of like that, like you could tell like the armor on the right hand side and like the left hand side, how the light shines through darkness, and so I was already kind of working on that piece when I got the prompt for it, so I kind of tailored it to it. But like when you look at that, you wouldn't necessarily think like, oh, that's like inspired from a Bible verse, which normally I don't go in with like an intent or like an overall look. I just go with a feel, usually from like a quote. So normally mine aren't necessarily directly tied to like biblical passages, but that definitely was the one that, you know, did have that, the Ephesians 6-10. But it ended up doing really well, and I felt like that was like, again, that was like really good feedback for me. You know, like, okay, well, you know, this, you can be like self-taught and still like, you know, make art and have it be recognized, you know, so
Yeah, that's really cool too to see that, because when you're saying you wouldn't necessarily know, that is true, but it's also so funny. Like, I guess I hadn't thought about the fact that when you see art that you know is Catholic art or is Christian art or any denomination, usually it's because it's representational.
Right.
So to think about abstract art as an outlet for religious processing or thinking about religion in any kind of way, that I've just never, it's never occurred to me. I guess.
Yeah.
Because you read
especially
it through
if
the
they're
lens
not leading
of the
with
viewer.
it like this is.
Yeah.
It's got a big
Yeah.
cross in the middle of the painting.
Right, and the Bible next to it. Yeah, it's true.
Wow. So what did you say the prompt was for the show again?
For that.
Yeah, for that piece.
Ephesians 6-10. It's about like spiritual warfare.
Oh, I meant for the show. That it was hanging in, you said? Or was like a...
Engage Art.
Oh, yeah, maybe I misunderstood.
Engage Art was the contest, and then the prompt was Ephesians 6-10, which was like about spiritual warfare.
Oh.
And so you were supposed to make a piece that like represented like putting on the full armor of God.
Oh,
Gotcha.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said that you chose that to submit versus they... Oh, wow. So, and was that through a gallery or an art collective?
No, that was from like an online international organization called Engage Art.
Okay. All right. I missed some of the context.
No, that's okay.
That's super cool.
I might not have been describing it correctly. But yeah.
That's awesome. Another thing too that I've noticed in some of the anecdotes you've been sharing is that a lot of these are like online viewings or things, like at least when you were starting out, things that were prompts that you probably found by Googling and looking for opportunities like that, which I think is something really important to highlight, because for a lot of people there's this thing of like, why can't I show in a gallery, or like, why doesn't anybody want my work?
They don't come to you.
Right.
They don't come to, I just submittable online is one that I have found that I got a few different opportunities through.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, submittable, and then call for art. What was it? There's another online where you can submit, and they'll show you. You'll get emails about like new opportunities or whatever. Like, you really got to throw yourself out there, because none of the opportunities or recognition that I got came to me whatsoever. I had to initiate, you know, and I mean, I don't even you definitely have to do the work.
That's a good thing to think about, because we had interviewed someone in the past who said that she had worked in a corporate gallery before, and she said that a lot of artists would come in and expect to be catered to, when really it's like you're applying for a job.
Oh,
almost.
yeah.
Like, you need to know who you're applying to, what the prompt is, and really put yourself out there.
What the gallery like style is, and
Yeah.
and I haven't even approached that yet because
Me neither.
I don't know anything about the gallery world.
Yeah.
So because I know that they like are very particular and you have to do your homework, I'm like being very slow to think about. I haven't found galleries in the area that I feel like is my aesthetic per se, you know. So hopefully one day I'll be able to like do that, but I'll need to have my ducks in a row before I do that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you guys are both artists, I'm
Yeah.
assuming?
Yeah.
What do you do for art? What style?
I do mixed media, a lot of painting and pen and ink drawings. So
Nice.
yeah, collage.
Yeah, I mostly paint, but I also do like collage and stuff. But a lot of what I do a lot of like portraits and figurative stuff, really. But
Yeah, me too.
I don't know. I do a lot of like character design too. So a lot of the things that I make will be like a face of like, I don't know, like creatures or like mythic stuff or like stuff like that I will just kind of make up. I also make a lot of use a lot of religious motifs too, kind of like what we were saying in a kind of like I'll do like paint. I've done a lot of like crucifixion scenes as well, or paintings of saints and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really consider what I do to be like kind of spiritual art, but I use a lot of that stuff visually. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that makes sense.
It's always such a like a weird question to like answer without the like advantage of having your art with you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I just passed that immediately. I was like, I
yeah,
paint.
you
Here
said,
you go.
I draw. Yeah, I should have done that maybe. But
No, I kind of followed.
Yeah. I do a lot of I do autobiographical comic panels. Like
those are cool.
They're cool, I
They're
guess. And a lot of portraiture and some mixed media collage. I do a lot of that too, and like a range of themes. So
Yeah, but what has been our like ongoing and most like what's up?
Oh, this.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is like interviewing. It's just interviewing people because like, you know, like all three of us know this, but the listener may not. We were just talking about not like breaking the fourth wall too much in a private conversation, but like we've never met you, and that's something we do all the time with interviews that like is like really exhilarating and like so educational to us, is like to just meet up with somebody who makes art and just has like a completely different life and like you know style or like our just way of thinking than us, and to just come into your space. So like first of all, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
of
you so
course.
much. And
This
thank
is
you
just
for the
really
coffee.
beautiful
Yeah, of
to be
course.
here because like I don't know, like this is like this is your home. So it's just really cool to just come in here and take a look and to hear what you have to say. Do you
Yeah.
play chess also?
I know how to play chess.
Gotcha.
I said to my husband too, I said, you know, we didn't play chess once during the pandemic, so if we weren't going to play chess during the pandemic, I'm not sure if we're ever going to play chess, but we have played a couple games. But I do know how
Sure.
to, and I do like it. We just...
It's a beautiful board.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Wow.
I feel like I have so many other questions, but what's our...
Oh, we're
Oh,
at
wow.
an hour.
Oh, my
But
gosh.
Yeah. No, this has been a really a beautiful conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
we
you so much.
honestly
Thank you
really
guys
appreciate
for-
you having us.
For coming over and...
Yeah. Is there
taking
anything
a look at my
else?
stuff.
Is there anything else that you want to touch on? Any projects you're working on, or anything you would want people to know before we close?
The only other project I'm working on is the Not the Same Person project. So
Yeah.
I had in like 2012 I got a letter in the mail that was from the RMV that said that they were revoking my license for 2 charges in Pennsylvania, which I had never been to Pennsylvania.
Huh.
And I was also like 22 at the time, so I was like, what? So what happened was it was another Amanda L. Smith with the same date of birth from Pennsylvania who had 2 DUI charges. And so she was supposed to be put on the Do Not Drive list, which is a national registry. But they put me on there instead.
Oh, no.
And so for like 10 years, I had my license as suspended. And it was the hardest struggle I've ever had to deal with because there was no resolution. So what happens is none of the states talk to each other in terms of their technology. They don't there's no, and that's the thing, I have a technology background in enterprise software, so I know what's out there and what's capable. And so it was so frustrating as like a young adult to not have anybody in my corner, like to fight for me, and having to make all these phone calls during business hours when I had a job.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, so-and-so, you need to call so-and-so, and so-and-so, you have to call so-and-so. So I went to the Boston R&V, like their special investigation unit, so many times, and they're like, we didn't put you on that list, so we can't take you off the list. And this Lucille woman from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation was no help, so she printed out that letter that's printed up, I'll grab it, which is called the Not the Same Person letter, and their resolution to this was to keep this letter on me at all times. And this was my only, and which boggled my brain. I'm like, I could have typed this up myself. I'm supposed to show this to a cop when he pulls me over. Like, this is your resolution to this. So it just says, your response to the possible match of the problem driver system, Amanda Lee Smith, I'm Amanda Lamoureux Smith, with the same date of birth with an established Pennsylvania driver's record. After reviewing the records and documentation, it's determined you and the driver who's sanctioned in Pennsylvania are not the same person. So I'm supposed to keep this with me at all times. And they were no help. They did not take me out of the system. And they said that the only way that this could get resolved was if this Amanda Lee Smith came in. I'm like, yeah, so she's probably, why would you do that? Oh, I wonder why I never got in trouble for those DUIs. Why don't I go to the DMV and be like, where are those DUIs that I had that aren't America? Like, that's not realistic. You're telling me. And I was like, also, you have my address. So she's not getting any of this. Like, what do you mean? So what happened was when she went to go renew her license, it flagged it in the system. And so that's why I got that letter. But the fight to, like, nobody wanted to deal with me. They were like, oh, sorry, I can't help you. Oh, sorry, I can't help you. I got pulled over once when I was on my way to a softball game. And I, of course, had this letter. And the cop looked at my license. And he went and, put my information in and came back. And he's like, yeah, it says your license is suspended. I'm like, I know. I explained the whole situation. Of course, I sound like a crazy person. And he's like, yeah, hold on a second. So I was like, sat there for 30 minutes. He comes back and he says, all right, so I'm going to let you go because it says that the Amanda L. Smith in the system has brown eyes and yours says hazel. And in my head, I'm like, you pick your color eye on your license. So I was like, that's why you're letting me go. But in my head, but I, of course, didn't say that. And he's like, you should really get that fixed. And I was like, should I? You think I should get that fixed? Do you have any idea how I could get that fixed? Like, and I was like really being sassy, but it was just like such a level of frustration because all of the calls that I've made, and I'm pretty persistent, and so for me, I just think about how many Smiths and Jones and like common names there are, and like how many times I've had other people's debt on my my credit report that isn't mine, and it's just like, I know the level of sophistication that is available for software, and I just know that the budgets are not being given to the state to have that type of software. But so none of the state systems talk to each other. It was such a traumatic thing to go through, and so I just want to fight for that. So I'm making a piece of like a collage of this, and just kind of but that's like one day I really want. That's kind of where I want to get to, is like how many different Smiths and Jones and common names there are that probably deal with this all the time, and it's just not okay, and it's not acceptable. These are the organizations that are designed to protect people, and they're the ones that are ruining unnecessary people's lives. So
I've never thought about that before.
Take a deep breath.
And you're lucky to be someone that is so persistent to get a letter like this. Like some people would just let that go and it might ruin your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's still like it like causes like I can feel like my heart rate going up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so unfair because none of that is true, and it's not my fault. And to have that on your record, it took me like 10 years to finally get someone to take it off.
Wow.
It's just not okay.
Yeah,
it's not okay. So that's the only thing that I would want to talk about too, but that's a work in progress.
Yeah, definitely keep us updated on that. That's really interesting. Wow. Huh.
Damn.
Yeah. And it never even occurred to me that would be an issue. You would think that we'd be beyond that point, but I'm preaching to the choir now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Especially it's like 2021.
I know. Yeah.
Data entry issues.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, think to myself, why does my social security number card only have my middle initial? All these thoughts. Like, if there ever to be a document for a full middle name, wouldn't it be that one?
Yeah.
Like Amanda L. Smith. Well, clearly there's more than one.
Yeah.
Right. Jeez.
Oh man.
That's a whole rabbit hole for another time, but
Well, thank you so much for talking to us. This has been really cool. I love your art. And this has been really cool.
Coming and,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
talking and letting me show you everything.
Absolutely. Thank you for reaching out. I'm very excited that this vehicle, this podcast, is connecting us to such interesting people.
Yes.
So
Yeah, wow.
yeah.
Great. All right.
All right.
Boston Art Podcast, I guess. It's always weird ending these.